Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us. If you're watching this on the replay, thank you for watching the replay. My name is Rick Garofolo. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the CEO of the Dental Practice Mechanics and speak nationally on compliance topics and business management. And I am joined this evening by Kevin Doyle with Rectangle Health. And we're going to talk a little bit about PCI compliance, patient billing strategies, and some other topics as related to collecting money from your patients, which is really what the goal is for all of us. So, Kevin, are you back yet?
I'm back, Rick. Thank you for putting this together, and thank you for having me on tonight. I really appreciate it. I'm excited.
No problem. I am too. Should be a fun night. So, if you would, tell us just briefly a little bit about you and about what you do.
Sure. So I'm with Rectangle Health, as Rick mentioned. We are a patient payments company. We work with 60,000 providers across the country, and we have this real healthcare exclusive processing platform, which means we don't process payments for any retail providers out there. In doing so, we've kind of learned what medical and dental offices want and need when it comes to accepting payments. And we've been around for 30 years. So while we're on the cutting edge of technology, we're far from a startup. And I have been with the company for, I guess it'll be 14 years later this summer.
Wow. That's a long time. But all right. Well, I wanted to put this together because we had a lot of questions in the group specifically about PCI compliance. And I know that that there's a lot for people to keep up with. We have HIPAA, we have OSHA, now we have the ONC and the 21st Century Cures Act and all of these other rules and regulations that dental offices have to follow. And then I mentioned PCI compliance and people will say, well, wait, what is that? So, can you just explain, in kind of layman's terms, what PCI compliance actually means?
Yes, absolutely. So PCI compliance, what does PCI stand for? PCI stands for the payment card industry. So the common acronym is PCI DSS, the Payment Card Industry Data Security Standards, and they are just that. It's a uniform set of standards agreed upon by all the major card associations, Visa, MasterCard, Discover, Amex. Now, they all join forces in PCI, this PCI Council, mainly because several years ago, each of the card brands had their own set of standards they wanted businesses to comply with as far as data security. Well, there were some big breaches, and the powers that be came in and said, hey, we need a uniform set of standards. So that's when they came up with PCI. In today's iteration of PCI, so there are these standards you have to comply with credit cards, how you accept credit cards, how you store credit cards, how you transmit credit card information. Not only do you have to comply with those standards, you also now have to fill out a self-assessment questionnaire at least annually, depending on which level you qualify under, and file it with the PCI Council. And then once they receive it, you're issued a PCI validation number, validation certificate. So long story short, it's a set of guidelines that every business that accepts the credit card has to comply with.
That's pretty simple. That's pretty simple. And I'll tell you, one of the services that we do, one of the services we provide is what we call our overhead analysis report. And one of the things, and listen, when we're talking about a dental office that produces $100,000, $150,000 a month, it's really small potatoes. But one of the first things I look at is their merchant services statement every month. And I always see that, for some it's $35, for some it's $45, for some it's $55 or $65 a month PCI compliance fee. And I always say, did you not complete your self-assessment? Did you not do this? And they'll say, oh, well, we didn't know we had to. And a lot of merchant services will tack on that $35 to $65 fee every month because you didn't complete that PCI self-assessment.
Yeah, it's funny you bring that up, Rick. I kind of laugh. I shouldn't laugh sometimes, but we see it a lot where providers will turn compliance into a revenue bucket for themselves.
Right.
And we ask what's in the best interest of our client, because we're only dealing with doctors' offices. If there's a food truck that takes credit card payments on a mobile device, they can drive away. When that doctor's name is on the door on the shingle out front, most offices take it a little more seriously, and they really want to be compliant. And that's why we partner with them to ensure that they are, and we have the best interest of the practice at heart.
Right. And that, so let me ask you this. I mean, what is involved in being PCI compliant? I mean, one thing I see all the time is I'll walk into a dental office, and behind the front desk, there's that 3-ring binder with all the credit card authorization forms filled out that has the patient's credit card number, expiration date, CVV code, billing zip code, everything on a piece of paper in a 3-ring binder separated by, we charge these on the first, these on the second, these on the third, so on and so forth. And it's just kind of sitting there behind the front desk. Is that PCI compliant?
So the old MBA answer is possibly. The reality is there's two options when it comes to storing credit card data in an office. One of the big misconceptions when it comes to compliance is a lot of offices say, well, I don't store credit card information. Do I need to be compliant? And the answer is yes. Whether you store credit card data, like you said, in a binder or in an Excel spreadsheet, God forbid, yes, you have to be compliant. When it comes to the binder, when it comes to credit card data storage, there's really two ways to go about doing it. Theoretically, there is a way to store credit card data on paper as long as it's under quote unquote reasonable control, meaning it has to be locked up in a safe or a drawer that locks. Only certain people can have access to the keys to it. There are literally, I think there's a dozen or two different rules that go into that. And I think there's something like 220 different sub rules that govern that. So the reality is, if you attempt to do it and be compliant on your own and fill out that self-assessment questionnaire, it could be pretty tricky. Even one of the new guidelines says that you may need to hire a qualified security assessor, a QSA, to come to the practice and audit all those policies you have in place if you're going to store credit cards in a tablet or in a binder. So it can be pretty tricky. So that's kind of option one when it comes to credit card data security. So theoretically, there is a way to do it. It certainly can't be up on the countertop, like you said.
Right.
We hope we don't see it too often. There is another option where you can have a third-party vendor that has a vault and a tokenization mechanism so that you're not actually storing credit card data there in the office.
Okay. And that really, I mean, probably is the most secure. I mean, like you said, if you have it saved in an Excel spreadsheet or, in a binder that just sits on the desk and isn't under lock and key, under that reasonable control, you're storing it, let's say, on an Excel spreadsheet on a computer. Now we have ransomware. The ransomware DDoS attacks have become big news again because they've increased already this year the number. I mean, I've seen 4 or 5 dentists in one group in the past 3 or 4 weeks post, I got hit with ransomware. So now, in addition to having a HIPAA issue, now you have a PCI compliance issue because you had 25 or 30 credit card numbers stored on an Excel spreadsheet in that database on your server in a shared folder with the database, with everything else. And what are the reporting requirements, or issues, what, like, if that were to happen, what would you, as far as PCI compliance, what would you have to do?
So
Who do you
you are
report that to?
you are required to self-report if you know you've been breached. Um, More often than not, most providers, if they are breached, a lot of times they don't even realize it. But there's some pretty sophisticated algorithms that can track kind of common places where a card was used, and almost always through that data, sifting through it, they can track back where the card was breached. And then it gets into, what happens if we didn't know we were breached, but we were. Well, there are penalties for that. They are at the discretion of the card brands. It could be, if you've been being breached for 3 months or 6 months, it could be a monthly fee going back to the point of the breach, anywhere from $5,000 a month to $100,000 a month. I can tell you this: the average, and I forget the statistic, where I saw this, and I'll have to get it in the show notes, Rick. But the average cost of a breach for a small business is $3.8 million, which means 3/4 of small businesses that have had a breach shut down. It's just they can't dig out from that hole.
Right. Yeah, that would be expensive. And I know I've seen people say, well, we have cyber liability coverage that covers us for that. But I think what people fail to understand is you may have a cyber liability policy, but one of the requirements of that policy is you maintain HIPAA compliance, data backups, managed services, PCI compliance, everything in order for that policy to be in effect.
And there are so many ways into an office for a hacker, and everybody thinks it's kind of like identity theft. Everyone thinks, well, someone else, it's going to happen to someone else. It's not going to happen to me. Unfortunately, it happens. And the same thing with data breaches. Every medical and dental practice I work with, God forbid, we hope it doesn't happen to them, but eventually someone may be breached. So at that point, you don't want to be the one that's not PCI compliant, that wasn't securing their patients, they're trusting patients' information securely. And there's so many ways in. I mean, a common example is this: most offices have internet phones. There are very few analog phone lines anymore, which means, are we securing our network securely enough that even when a patient calls in with a credit card number, theoretically that voice message can be hacked? It doesn't have to be someone, a cat burglar coming in and stealing the binder off the front counter.
Right, exactly. And that's, I think, I did a webinar a few weeks ago with Debbie Carr, who is a network security expert, and that's all she does is network security for doctors, dentists, hospitals in the medical field, but primarily dentists. And that was one of the things we talked about is, having those layers of security, because I mean, ultimately, if a hacker wants to get into your system, they're gonna. There's no real way to 100% stop them, but you have to make the effort. You have to show them that you made your best attempt at having those levels of security in order to stop, or try to stop, the hacker. Put as many layers of protection between you and them as possible. And I think a lot of dentists think, well, I have a firewall, that's good enough. Well, the password to your router is the factory password that I can go on Linksys website and find out exactly what it is. And people tend to forget that there's much more at stake here than just HIPAA compliance. So, so we talked about the penalties, we talked about that. I don't want to be all, gloomy and these are the terrible things that can happen, and fines and 3.8 million, and that I hate concentrating on that stuff. I want people to know it exists, but I want to kind of change gears a little bit and talk about how we can make practices cash flow better. Any business lives and dies with cash flow. So, there has to be things that we can do in order to improve the cash flow, reduce overhead expenses. I know we were talking in one of the ADOM events about what it actually costs a practice to mail out a statement. And I can't remember your exact number, but what was that number?
One of the, and I believe it's an ADA statistic, is it's somewhere between $7 and $9 per bill that we send out to a patient when it comes to not only postage, admin time, supplies, the bill itself, ink toner, and the time it takes to send that bill out. It's somewhere between $7 and $9.
So $7 to $9 per statement. I was just looking at a client's statement queue earlier today, and she had 262 statements waiting to be sent out to patients. So, I mean, we're talking $1,600 in expenses to mail those statements out. And how many of those patients are going to pay on the first statement? You're going to have to send another one. You're going to have to send a third. You're going to have to send a letter. And I mean, you're right. People don't think about the administrative cost because somebody has to now look at that. And let's look at the bills and let's make sure we're not charging the doctor's mother-in-law. Let's make sure we're not charging the doctor's brother. We're not mailing a bill to the priest or this guy who does this or whoever it may be. And that all costs money. Mm-hmm. There's an expense to that. And I want to kind of give people who are watching the replay, whether you're on live or you're watching the replay in the Facebook group or on our YouTube channel, I want to give them some ways that we can save them money by finding alternate ways of letting people know they have a bill with you. And I mean, I know this is something that Rectangle Health does, but I mean, we hate being a big long commercial. You know how I feel about that,
right?
But what are some ways other than me printing out a statement, putting it in an envelope, putting a stamp on it, or even paying one of the printers, one of the companies that will send them for you? What are some other ways that we can get patients to pay their bills other than doing that?
Right. So we don't want to make this a commercial, like you said, but this is really our bread and butter. This is how we help practices run more efficiently and streamlining their payment process, hopefully so that bill never enters that billing cycle that could take 30, 60, 90 days, 262 bills a month. One of the biggest ones is now text to pay. Text to pay is great because when we look at the numbers, not only do we not have to send a bill that original bill sent, but we now also don't have to field a phone call back to the office when a patient gets their bill and they call in, they want to ask several questions. It takes about 3.5 minutes on average per phone call coming back. So if you have the ability to securely send the patient a text message, not only that, 98% text messages are read on the first send, saying, hey, it's Kevin from Dr. Smith's office. Your balance from last week's visit is $42. And there's a secure payment link that they could tap in that text message. It opens up the browser on their phone. The dollar amount that they owe is pre-filled in. And if you're anything like me, because consumerism in America, my credit card number is already stored in my browser on my iPhone. I tap that, I hit send, and in a matter of seconds, the office can get a text message back saying Kevin Doyle made a payment for $48 or whatever his balance was. That is a big one in this day and age, and maybe it has to do, like I said, with the consumerism in America. Think about Netflix, think about Amazon, think about Uber. These are all places where we get in that Uber car, we're ordering something on Amazon, you order it, you trust them that their card is stored, and they could bill that card for you. So that kind of leads us to the vault. We mentioned tokenization earlier when it comes to credit card data storage. No one really wants that binder on the desk. It's too difficult to truly secure and be PCI compliant. So there are options where the patient can pay today with one card swipe and also give an authorization to the practice to bill that same card in the future. So we get a check from insurance in the mail. There's a balance due of some micro balance, 60, less than $100. With 2 clicks of the mouse, you can now bill that card and email the patient a receipt for that transaction.
Wow. Yeah. And that, I think that is a huge thing. I mean, listen, I have been researching payment solutions for dental offices for the past probably 10 or 12 months, really since the shutdown last year, trying to find one that I felt comfortable recommending to my clients. And it took me a long time to find you guys, but now that I have, I mean, I will tell you that that vault program that you guys have is really what pushed me over the edge, that somebody can swipe their card in the office and sign, and if insurance pays and they downgrade a posterior composite to an amalgam and the patient has a $16 balance, you don't even have to call them. You don't even have to anything. You just hit a button or a couple buttons and you've processed that $16 payment right away. There's no statement, there's no bill mailed out, there's no $7 to $9 expense to mail out a $16 bill. And that, for me, that's what pushed me over the edge, because I know firsthand how people are willing to pay online. I don't do a lot of credit card stuff within my company, but most of our clients pay their bills via ACH. But people they want to pay online. I sent a bill out today for a brand new client for their consulting deposit. And I emailed them. I said, here's the link. It's through Intuit. Everybody trusts it. Here you go. You can pay right online through Intuit. I hadn't sent the bill 10 minutes before, and I had an email from Intuit saying they had already paid it. And that's huge for me. Like you said, people have become used to that. What did you call it? Tokenization?
Tokenization, yep.
Where everything is just paid and it's stored. And, I'll tell you, eBay must love me because I've spent more in the past 3 months since they added Apple Pay as an option. Mm-hmm. I've spent more on eBay in the past 3 months because of the Apple Pay. I can double click a button and it looks at my face and says, okay, it's paid. I've spent more on eBay in 3 months than I have in probably the past 3 years. And it's because it's easy. It's easy for me to pay. I don't have to type a credit card number in. I'm old. I now just got my first pair of glasses ever, which I refuse to wear. I don't want to see the little numbers on the screen. I just want to make my life easy and pay it and be done with it. And I think that's, for me, that is a big convenience factor that I think a lot of patients want. I mean, do you have any numbers or any ideas of how many people would prefer to pay online if they could, or pay via text or through their phone? I know I saw something somewhere, but I can't remember where it was.
And I'm struggling to remember the statistic, Rick, because I've seen it too, and I cannot recall off the top of my head what that statistic was. I do know this. When it comes to, we think about a patient when they receive a bill, like you said, if the easier it is to pay that bill, the more likely they are to pay it quicker. If I get a bill and it lands on my countertop and I'm putting my kids to bed, I have to remember to take that bill with me tomorrow to work and make a phone call to the office and make a payment. Right. If I get a message saying, oh, I could just tap this link and make a payment, that's a lot easier. If you can take me out of it and just bill my card and send me a notice for these micro balances, my life is, so much more easier because of that. So I forget that statistic. I'll have to look it up and maybe we can add it to the show notes as well, or if it comes to you.
Absolutely. And I think that's a big thing. Like you said, those micro balances, which, I mean, what do you consider a micro balance?
So I usually tell my clients this. It depends on the area of the country. Are we urban? Are we rural? What are the demographics of the area? That type of thing. I like offices to start with something around $100 or $200. Um, I think we've seen something around 75% of people, as long as the maximum is 200 or below, are okay with vaulting that card and giving permission today to bill that card in the future. So 200 is about right for most offices, but I tell people, start slow, maybe 100, maybe a 50 to start. And all of a sudden, if you're doing 100 bills a month, 30% of those are probably less than $50 or $100, at least 30%. And now we've cut your billing down by 30%, all by getting an authorization from the patient up front. So it's a great way to dip your toe in the water. And some offices, I have an office here locally in Pennsylvania. It's an oral surgeon, and they kind of decided, you know what, we can't spend so much time and money on billing. It's a real burden on the practice. We're going to be very transparent with our patients. We're going to say, here's our procedure amount. We're going to bill your insurance for you. We've gotten a predetermination. We know insurance should cover X, meaning your amount due today is Y, and the patient pays. And they tell the patient, if insurance doesn't cover the full amount that they've estimated, because it is an estimate, we're going to bill your card up to the full treatment amount. So for them, it just doesn't make sense. And as long as they're transparent with their patients, patients are happy to say, sure, no problem. I know what I'm getting into. I want my work done here. Bill my card if there's a balance due. It makes my life easier too.
Right, right, absolutely. And I think ultimately, at the end of the day, that really is what it's about. It's about, we're not only making our life at the front desk, our life in the dental office easier, but we're making the patient's life easier as well. And, anytime you can make something easier, they're going to pay for it. Like you said, you can get a bill in the mail. I mean, I honestly maybe empty my mailbox once every 2 weeks, because everything that's important comes to me electronically. My electric bill and my internet bill and my mortgage statement, everything comes electronically. So I don't have to open my mail. And I think we really need to, in the dental industry, we really need to kind of catch up with the rest of the world, where they're doing these things electronically. I don't even get a bill from the electric company anymore. Everything's done electronically. They don't even want to mail me a statement anymore. So I think we need to catch up, and we need to find those tools to allow us to catch up to the rest of the world. And that, again, that's a big thing. So, I mean, I want you to kind of take the next few minutes. I'm going to mute myself. I'm going to go away. Take the next few minutes and tell us, what you guys can do to help bring dentists into the 21st century. We've got this 21st Century Cures Act coming up. What you guys can do to kind of bring us into the 21st century and help dental offices save money by getting paid faster and not having to mail out, like I said, even if it's 30 or 40% of those bills every month. If you can knock off $400, $500, $600 worth of costs, that's huge. So, I want you to take the next few minutes and just go ahead and share what you guys can do.
Absolutely. I'm going to share my screen if I can. And I'm going to try to talk about this all within the backdrop, Rick, of that PCI compliance where we started earlier. Tokenization, the vault, offices that do want to store credit cards, they didn't know how to do it previously. So I'll kind of show you some ways. So our flagship product is Practice Management Bridge. It's called Bridge because it can interface in real time with really any practice management software out there. So I don't have your talking to you, the attendees out there, your practice management software on my system, but it'll post payments in real time. So it's web-based. There's no heavy software that you have to download. You just go to a website, you log in with your secure username and password, and you're ready to run payments. So we're in our payments tab, and I'm going to walk you through a payment while adding a patient to the vault, kind of all in one fell swoop. So to paint the picture, like we said before, patient comes in for their procedure today. They're getting a couple fillings, and they say, hey, bill my insurance. They're going to cover this. Just bill me if there's a balance after that. It makes my life a lot easier. Now, again, you know as well as I do, if insurance doesn't cover the full amount, mailing a bill can be mailing a bill, calling them at home, threatening collection, sending a second bill, sending a third bill, and ultimately can be a very painful process. So while we're getting payment for today's portion, let's say they're out of pocket today, as I'm going to make a number up, $25. We could say, hey, Mrs. Smith, hey, Mr. Smith, I see you're paying by your card today. We're going to bill your insurance for you. If there's a shortfall of, say, less than $200, we could put a maximum here. Can we bill the same card that you're paying with today? And I'm going to make a vault ID. Anytime we store a card, we issue that a vault ID. I'll call it Rick G. And we can also track that payment. Maybe Kevin's the payer here, but I'm paying for my daughter, Sadie, for example. I can track this along with Sadie's name because she's the patient. And I hit submit. Now I've run the payment. I'm on my home Wi-Fi here. Bear with it a second. My kids must be on their tablets.
Well, I don't know about you. I mean, I know about where you live town-wise, and I'm gonna say I'm about 10 minutes away from getting hit with a pretty heavy thunderstorm. So
Yeah, it's getting pretty dark out there.
it's moving your way. I think you're only maybe 40 minutes, 45 minutes from me.
Yep.
Oh, it's coming.
So we've now run the payment, and we have the option to email the patient a receipt. I'll press print here just so you could see it. We do brand this for every individual office, meaning we'll put your logo at the top here. We'll put your website at the top as well. And when I hit next, the patient is also given their written authorization. So I have a signature pad connected to my computer. For the sake of time, I skipped that step, but they also sign an electronic signature pad saying I authorize the practice to bill my card up to $200 each year. It is tokenized, as we see here, meaning that card data is simply not here on your computer. We've run the payment. Our gateway has its point-to-point encryption, P2PE, meaning we've entered the card information. When I hit submit, it encrypts it, sends it off-site. We vault that, meaning Rectangle Health vaults that card information for you. You're simply not storing it in your office whatsoever. So a couple weeks go by, and the insurance comes through, and the balance due is, call it $82 or $65. We can pull that patient up really by any of these metrics here. I know I made that vault ID, Rick G, so I could search it, and here's that payment. So I can now run a payment on that same card that the patient vaulted originally. Again, not even you, the office manager, not even you, the administrator, not even the doctor, me as the processor, no one can see that card information. It's totally tokenized. If you have more than one office, you could choose to allocate that payment to a specific office. And the balance due after insurance was $62. And I could hit submit here and bill that same card that the patient authorizes to bill and just simply send them a receipt. So again, when we start to think about the time and money and frankly the headaches that come along with all of the steps that we just skipped there, and we're giving the patients what they want. People do not want to be burdened with paper bills. They don't want to be burdened with having to write out a check and mail it back to you. If this makes their life easier, they're much more likely to agree to vaulting their card. And we have some language we can give out to offices as far as what the data security is and how it makes them secure. Now, once we have a card in the vault, the situation comes up all the time. Insurance denies a claim. Patients up front with us and say, hey, I've already hit you've gotten a predetermination. Their annual maximum has already been met. And they say, I need to get this done. I simply can't pay, let's say $500. Can I pay you $100 a month for the next 5 months? Could be any number of ways to break down that payment. You know as well as I do, if we send a patient a bill for $100 every month, we're not always getting a check back in the mail for $100. So we can say to the patient, sure, Mr. Smith, Mrs. Smith, we can certainly bill you $100 a month, but rather than mailing you a bill, we'll do $500 over 5 payments. And let's say we're going to start June 15th, and it could be any day of the month. and we'll bill that. Or maybe the patient says, hey, I get paid on Fridays. Can you bill me every 2 weeks on starting next Friday? Sure, but we'll do it over 10 payments. So every other Friday, we're going to bill their debit card for $50. So the patient's now appreciative. They're a patient for life because you're able to work out this payment arrangement with them, but we're not adding any burden onto the practice. So from a loyalty perspective, it's a massive thing to be able to offer to your patients. We just hit submit, we enter the card information again and hit submit here, and we save it. And that patient is set. It confirms those payment arrangements with you before you hit OK. And now they're set up on a payment plan. And if they're in the office, they can actually sign an authorization for you as well.
So that is huge for, offices that do monthly membership charges. They have an in-house discount plan, and they charge, rather than $349 a year, they charge $35 a month. And they're paying somebody to manage that for them. You can divide that out, like right there you go, over 12 months, and collect that every month. You don't have to worry about manually processing it, because I think that's the other thing people forget about is, when you have a credit card terminal, most merchant services charge you, well, they tell you, well, we're going to give you this super low percentage, but it's only for very specific card types. It's not for every card. American Express is going to be a higher percentage. And if it's a rewards card, like my Capital One gives me 2% cash back on every purchase, that's going to be a higher percentage.
Right. I love that you brought that up, Rick. I mean, let's think about that. If you're getting 2%, there's no way the card company's giving you more than they're charging the merchant, right? So something's got to give. When we see these, what we call teaser rates, where they're a rate that looks too good to be true, it probably is, and these rewards cards and keyed in entries, you end up seeing a statement and there's 30 or 40 different line items of fees and surcharges and transaction fees and PCI non-compliance fees on there, and it's not quite the 1.8% that you were promised.
And I think that's a big thing for people to remember is, you can be promised 1.8%, 1.9%, or, flat, flat fee, whatever it may be, but it's going to be different. And I've seen that myself in offices that I work with, that I manage, is, we're told, okay, you're going to be, 1.9%. That's your percentage. And then we get the bill and I add it all up, and, I'm a big numbers guy, and it comes out to 2.64%. And I'm like, well, wait, what happened to well, that was for this type of card. That was for a debit, or that was for a this. And, that didn't include the 25-cent per transaction fee. Mm-hmm. That didn't include this. And all of a sudden it's a much bigger number. And, I'm annoyed. Everybody's annoyed. But yeah, I mean, I've often wondered how, if, Capital One is giving me 2%, well, I mean, here's a perfect example. And I don't know, maybe, you tell me how they do it. I just got an email today from Discover saying everything you buy for June, July, and August at gas stations and streaming services is 5% cash back.
Mm-hmm.
How the heck?
Yeah, I'm sure there's some algorithm that looks at your spending history somehow and says, hey, we can afford to do this as a teaser rate to get Rick to start using Discover. And they know that over the course of X amount of months, they're going to make that money back, whatever that bonus is, unless there are savvy credit card, I'd say hacker in the wrong way, but they call them points hackers. So there are ways to kind of get the points without having to, where they don't make the money back. But the bank card 101 is this: the merchant processor, whoever offers you merchant services, if they say, let's just make it a round number, they say we're going to charge you 2%. or 3%, because we see on average in dental, it's somewhere between 2 and 3.5. There's a pretty tight range within there that offices end up paying. The merchant processor is not making the 2.5, 2.64, 2.75, whatever percent. That's a pass-through fee or interchange cost that's given back to Rick's Discover card, Rick's Capital One airline miles card, and then Visa adds on their portion. So the processor is making a very small margin of what's ever left over after they pass through that from the swipe fee, for lack of a better term. So the card issuer, their whole goal is, what rewards can we offer consumer A, consumer B, consumer C to entice them to use our card, knowing that every time that card swiped, they're guaranteed a swipe fee or the interchange fee. The merchant processor is really just the middleman in that process that tacks on a small margin to do the actual processing. So in that sense, the reason why we've kind of developed that as a company is this. We know everyone and their brother knows someone that processes payments, your banker, your brother-in-law, whoever it is. We need to be able to offer something to the healthcare community that's going to add value more than looking at your statement and saying, oh, I could save you $12 a month. Everyone wants to save $12, but is the juice worth the squeeze at that point? But if we can say, hey, we're going to speed up your receivables, you're going to average days on AR is going to be from 60 days to 30 days on average. And we're going to help you sending 250 statements a month or 100 statements a month to 65 statements a month. They're real metrics that we can help offices track. And at the end of the day, when we track those metrics, there's no way that we can ever cost a practice money.
Right. And that's huge. And I think people don't realize the hidden costs behind that. And excuse me, having something like the vault it's gonna save so much time, so much energy for the front desk. I mean, I make my living saving front desk people time, saving the teams in the office time. And this is just one more thing that's going to save us time so we can really concentrate on the patients, concentrate on the people who are in front of us. And I think that's huge for any team member, especially now. I mean, now we're going through a time where it's super difficult to find people to even come to work. So, you have less people doing the same amount of work, and you have two people that it used to be three, but now the two people are doing the same amount of work that three used to do. So anything we can do to alleviate some of that time, some of that stress is huge. Mm-hmm. And this is one of them. So, I mean, honestly, one of the things I was most excited about is the text to pay feature. How do we do that? How do we know, okay, send this person a statement online telling them pay your bill?
Yeah, so text to pay, I think I mentioned the statistics earlier, but something like 1 in 5, roughly 22% of phone calls that are made are actually answered on the other end. Because think about yourself. If it's me, if I don't recognize that number, I'm probably not answering it. I don't know if I have my dental office saved in my phone. I just kind of know it's when my appointment is.
Oh, but the other thing you got to remember is, you have a dental office that has 4, 5, 6 lines.
Right. Yeah.
You could have their main number programmed in, or, I mean, we do a lot of tracking. I know, I just started going to a new dentist, and I programmed their office number into my phone, and it's their Google number, not their actual office number. It's their Google tracking number. So every time I'm calling that, it looks like I found their number on Google. And, if when they call me, it doesn't come up as the name of the practice because I programmed in their Google number, which they're not making outbound calls from. So yeah, you're going to be an unknown number.
So you're an unknown number, which means there's a 20% chance that the patient's actually going to pick that up if you have to call them and tell them they have a payment. Or so I just set up an office that they move locations and they're using texting just to remind the patient so people don't go to their old office. Reminder, tomorrow's appointment is at our new address. Please go there. Don't go to our other office. So for Patient Express, it's kind of a new feature we've built in here. You see it in the left-hand column. All you have to do is when you have a new patient, enter them in patient registration. Rick, for a live demo, I'm not sure what phone number I should use, but you just put a cell phone number in here and hit save. And I kind of just made up a fake number there, but now I can go and I can pull this patient ID up at any time. And if it's, a lot of offices will use, if they're a Dentrix office, they'll say, okay, let's make their patient ID the same as their chart number in Dentrix or something like that. For here, we used Rick G as is. And I could pull this patient up now at any time. I can send a custom text message to that patient at any time. Now it could be something as simple as reminder. I'm going to put my typing skills on test here. Reminder, we have moved to 111 Main Street for tomorrow's appointment. So it could be something as simple as that. It could also be your balance from last week's visit. Okay, so I can't type really quickly when the pressure's on, but I can include a link in here and a dollar amount of $100. So I can text this link to a patient, and you can utilize the texting platform in any way you choose to. It is a one-way street when it comes to texting, and we've kind of toyed with the idea of having texting back and forth. And the overwhelming feedback we've gotten from offices is that if patients can text back, you'd have to hire a fourth person at the front desk just to manage the texting back and forth. So patient could text, you can text out, they have to call you if they need to change their appointment when you're sending them the reminder. But when they text that link, they're going to see something, and I'm pulling up here on my screen, a website to make that payment. So again, if there's more than one office, they can choose to allocate it. I'm a Southbury patient. On my bill, I have an account number, the patient name. If the card is different than whatever they're no more using, it's all stored in here. And I could put the payment amount. So I owe $100. And I could put my email address in here to receipt. I have to attest I'm not a robot, and I could submit that payment right then and there. Now, while you have this link, so you could text it to patients via the platform, we built this kind of dummy website for our dummy office here. You can also permanently post that payment link on your website. So the bills that you do send out, those, larger balances, people that chose not to keep a card on file for whatever reason, they can, now it's still convenient for them to pay by going to your website, clicking make a payment, and you can be receiving payments 24 hours a day.
So even I could just put a link right on the website saying pay your bill.
Yeah.
And it's done.
Make a payment, pay your bill. Yep. And it's just out there. And what most offices will do is write on the bill, because most software generation will allow you to personalize them somewhat. They'll say, hey, go to our website at drsmith.com and pay your bill there, or on their night message when they go home for the day. We've closed at 5 o'clock. If you're calling to pay your bill, go to our website at drsmith.com and you can make a payment there. So when they come in the next morning, not only do we not have to call the patient back and ask them for their card, but they're in their board meeting or they're at work and they don't answer, and we're going to play phone tag for the next 2 weeks. The payment's sitting there in the doctor's checking account, and you just apply it to the patient ledger, and you can move on with your day.
So that really, we are just making it convenient for the patient, and that's what's going to improve cash flow right there. Mm-hmm. Make things easy. Make it easy for them to pay. I mean, I'm a big believer in making things easier for the patient. I want to make it easy for them to do business with us. And part of doing business with us is paying your bill. And we're making it easy. Here's a text. Follow this link that's right in the text. Now I know you said, was it 20% of phone calls get answered? What was the percentage? You said it and I forgot, I'm sorry, of text messages that get read?
98% of text messages are read immediately, whether you have the number stored or not.
Wow.
So we're basically 5-to-1 on that ratio of being able to connect with a patient in real time when it comes to text versus a phone call.
Right. Absolutely. And that's I mean, that's a huge difference. You know, even if they don't pay it, they're at least going to say, okay, I have a bill. I know I got the bill. You know, I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've called a patient and said, hey, we mailed you a bill, 3 bills over the past 3 months, and we haven't heard from you. I never got them.
Never got it.
You know, now we're texting it, so we know you got it, and we know there's a 98% chance you read it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's huge. Well, I mean, is there anything else you want to talk about? Anything else you want to put out there? You know,
So there are some other neat features like within, and we may not have time for it to leave some time for Q&A, but even refunds, if a patient overpays without having to cut a check and have doctor sign it, mail it back, with you could do refunds here in 2 clicks of the mouse. There is a pre-registration tool built in here. I would say if you want to hear more about that or a more thorough demo, we could put my contact info out there later on, and I'm happy to take folks through it individually.
Now that does bring up a question that I have,
Mm-hmm.
because I've heard this regularly and I've heard different responses, and I'd like to know what it really is. I have had people say, well, the patient paid us $2,200 on a credit card. We paid the merchant services fee.
Mm-hmm.
We got the EOB and we found out we overcharged the patient by $1,000. I'm going to write them a check for that $1,000. And I'll say, well, why? Why would not just credit it back onto their credit card? And their response is, because then I'll have to pay the merchant services fee, not only on the $2,200 I already paid, but now I have to pay it again on the refund.
I know some processors will charge for refunds. We do not. So if your example, they paid $2,200, they actually needed to pay $1,200. We don't charge you anything whatsoever to process that $1,000 refund, and it's instantaneously back on the patient's card, and they see it show up, and you never have to mail a check. And the biggest thing we get from a lot of administrators and office managers is that trying to chase the doctor down for the signature, especially on a big one like $1,000, it's not always the easiest thing to do. So if we can take care of it with literally 2 clicks of the mouse, I can go to transaction reports. I can pull up that transaction. We'll do a smaller one that I just ran. Well, that storm is coming in. So if I could pull this up, this $62, and I can void or refund that with literally 2 or 3 clicks of the mouse.
And you don't charge
Nothing whatsoever.
anything for the refund. There's no
Correct. Zero.
No double fees or anything like that, because that's something that's never made sense to me, why somebody would pay to refund money.
Yeah, no, you shouldn't have to.
No, that's a good thing. I'm glad I asked that, and I'm glad it worked out that way, because that's something you and I hadn't talked about.
No, we hadn't prepped that at all. So.
I never thought to ask you that. And I'm sitting here going, okay, do I ask the question? Do I not ask the question? Because what if he gives me the wrong answer and I have to say, boy, that really sucks. Why do you do that?
Yeah, no, we never have, never will.
Okay. Okay, good. Well, that works out perfectly. Well, I thank you very much for taking the time to come on to, talk about everything that you guys do. Let me get going here. I definitely appreciate it. I am going to make sure I put your contact info. I put the link in the YouTube video. I'm going to email the link out to all of the registrants as well. And I'll also post it on the video that gets posted in the Facebook group as well, just so everybody knows how to contact you if they do want to find out more about how you guys can help them. Like I said, I mean, for me, it's huge that vault and saving time and texting the patient to pay their bill and having the make a payment link right on my website. It makes it easy for the patient to do business with us. And I think that's really what it's all about. So
Rick, thanks so much for having me on tonight. I sincerely appreciate it. And hopefully we added a little bit of value to some practices out there.
absolutely. And if anybody does have any questions, everybody knows how to get to me. Feel free to reach out if you have a question about PCI compliance or about my best practices for sending statements. Definitely let me know. I'm always happy to answer those. Kevin, thank you again for joining us. I'll make sure I get those links out to everybody so you know how to contact Kevin. And everybody have a great rest of your week.
Have a great night, everybody. Thanks.
Thank you.